Thank you for joining the GPA webinar titled Fund Development Do's and Don'ts for Faith-Based Organizations. We will get started in about 4 minutes. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to either enter them into the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we will get to them. And then we'll also have a few moments between some of the slides where we will unmute the lines and you can ask your questions freely. Right now the lines are all muted, so it limits the background noises. Again, we'll get started in about 4 minutes. Thank you all for joining the GPA webinar. We'll get started in about 2 more minutes. If you are on the web portion, there is also an audio portion, as well as if you're on the phone, there is also a web portion. So you will need to use both links on the link for the web portion that is on your invite, as well as call in with the call information that's on your invite for audio. Again, we'll get started in a couple more minutes. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Grant Professional Association's webinar titled Fund Development Do's and Don'ts for Faith-Based Organizations. My name is Kelly Romero, and I'm the Membership Director for GPA and your moderator for the webinar today. At the end of the webinar, you will be directed to a brief survey. We ask that you please fill it out to assist us with future webinars. Let's get started. Today's presenter is Dr. Janell Harvey. Dr. Harvey is a seasoned grant professional who entered the field of fund development in 2002. To date, she has garnered $13 million in funds for a number of nonprofits and organizations throughout the Midwest. In 2002, she established Voice Incorporated, visionaries operating to improve Christian entrepreneurship for a for-profit organization that assists faith-based organizations with the creation of fund development plans and completion of both articles of incorporation and Form 1023. Dr. Harvey works full-time as a proposal developer for a school district in the Midwest and is the author of Historicity, Fund Development and Incorporation, a broad look at the faith-based sector. The book looks at the history of the Christian faith-based sector while making note of both Apostle Paul and the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. She has presented fund development workshops at a number of organizations, universities, and colleges throughout the United States. Janell, please feel free to begin your presentation.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Faith-Based Do's and Don'ts. Thank you, Kelly, for that rewarding introduction. Again, I am Dr. Janell Harvey, and I kindly thank all of you for registering with me today and the Grant Professional Association. At the end of the webinar, please send an email to me at drjanellharvey@gmail.com, and I will send a list of websites that I've used to assist faith-based organizations as they pursue their mission to empower the world, just like many of you are already doing. But first, many of you may be wondering just what is a faith-based organization? Well, faith-based organizations are of three types. They are congregations, national networks like the YWCA, and religious organizations, which are often incorporated separately from congregations. Faith-based organizations are often referred to as NGOs, or non-governmental organizations. And according to the humanrights.gov website, which is the official governmental website for human rights-related information, there are approximately 1.5 million NGOs that operate in the United States. And normally when the word faith-based is spoken, individuals immediately think of President Bush and the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. And we're going to delve into his initiative later on in the presentation. But first, let's look briefly at the agenda for today. We're going to begin by looking at the Center for Faith-Based and Community Initiatives, as well as the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. We'll follow that discussion with a brief discussion on charitable choice, followed by information on compliance, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and finally, fund development planning. According to the Yearbook of International Organizations, there were about 26,000 international NGOs by the year 2000, compared with about 6,000 in 1990. The U.S. alone had about 2 million non-governmental organizations in 2000, 70% of which are more than 30 years old. Can you imagine that? According to Giving USA in 2010, religious organizations received 34.6% of charitable donations. So clearly, more information needs to be discussed concerning how to successfully govern and sustain these organizations. And that's exactly why I'm facilitating today's webinar. Let's take a few moments and discuss President Bush's efforts to level the playing field for faith-based organizations through what was known as the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. That office was established under the Bush administration on January 29, 2001 in an effort to level the playing field while establishing faith-based organizations so that they can receive the same opportunities as nonprofits. And what exactly were those opportunities? Well, they included to obtain funding, to provide support to worthwhile causes, and to participate in grassroots training. This effort enabled community and faith-based organizations to work in tandem in order to combat such illnesses as homelessness, drug addiction, and even prisoner reentry. And I'm sure these are all areas that many of you are working diligently in on a daily basis. A faith-based organization is defined as an organization that is based on religious beliefs. And some notable faith-based organizations that I'm sure that many of you are well aware of are the Salvation Army and Campus Crusade for Christ, which is established at many universities and colleges throughout our nation. While President Bush's executive order to establish the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives has had positive impacts on communities around the world, Faith-based organizations, as many of you know, were actually established many years before the office was established. Upon the election of our current president, President Obama, the office was renamed the Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. Now, the Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships currently has 4 priorities, and they include to strengthen the role of community organizations in the economic recovery. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act created new opportunities for groups like us to participate in recovery through grant funding. And if you'd like to learn more about the grant opportunities that are currently available, you can visit recovery.gov or grants.gov. Secondly, it seeks to reduce unintended pregnancies, support maternal and child health, and support the White House Council on Women and Girls. A number of grant opportunities exist for faith-based organizations that want to further such initiatives, and they can be found by logging on to the United States Department of Health and Human Services website. Third, it promotes responsible fatherhood and strong communities. I'm sure that many of you are well aware of the fatherhood grant opportunity that's available. The Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships coordinates national fatherhood tours and speaks with local communities in order to get their feedback on how to strengthen families and the roles of fathers. And if your faith-based organization is interested in participating in the conversation or applying for the National Fatherhood Grant, then you should log on to fatherhood.hhs.gov/index.shtml. And don't worry if you're unable to write down the websites that I note in the presentation. If you send me an email upon completion of the presentation, I will send all of these web addresses to you in a document. It also promotes the interfaith dialogue and cooperation, which is an effort to encourage dialogue among members of various religious faiths throughout the world. If you'd like to learn about some of the initiatives that are currently taking place in your community or how to get involved, you can log on to www.uscirf.gov/. The website will make you aware of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom's upcoming events. As you all know, religious freedom is a right that is protected by the First Amendment. Although there is a separation of church and state, there are still faith-based do's and don'ts. The United States Department of Justice put together several documents that I refer to on a daily basis that articulate how faith-based organizations should govern themselves so that they operate their programs with integrity while ensuring that they are treated fairly. Faith-based organizations should adhere to the following. First, don't accept funding that requires restrictions on religious practices. You don't have to sacrifice your religious beliefs in order to receive grant funding. Next, don't use governmental money to fund religious activities such as Bible studies or retreats. However, privately funded sources may provide such money. A privately funded resource could include donations from individuals who restrict that their funds be used exclusively for such an endeavor. You also don't have to remove religious paraphernalia and icons merely because your organization is government funded. Religious symbols can therefore remain present and obvious throughout the buildings that you coordinate programming. Your organization can coordinate religious activities. However, grant money just cannot fund them. Some faith-based organizations actually set up separate charitable organizations to keep programs that receive government money separate from those that participate in religious activities. Faith-based organizations may not use federal funds to purchase religious materials, such as the Bible or the Quran, or other religious or spiritual materials. However, a staff member may be a rabbi, a priest, or a preacher, as long as he or she does not engage in religious activities while being paid with grant dollars. The Library of Congress's website provides a list of updates to the Freedom of Religion Act, which articulates how faith-based organizations must be governed. There are even documents that articulate how Congress has encouraged corporations to invest in faith-based organizations. As you've probably heard in the media, there are several different views concerning a faith-based organization's ability to seek religious-based candidates for positions when the organization is funded by the federal government. For example, I recently read a couple of news stories that examined protests stating how individuals were extremely upset if an organization founded on Christian principles only hired Christians for leadership positions. In the article entitled Effect of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act on Faith-Based Applicants for Grants, the Department of Justice sums up the concern. According to the department, a faith-based grantee's hiring preference for staff who share its religious identity and mission must be permitted if the FBO demonstrates that its program for which it seeks federal funding is an exercise of its religion. An example of this could be your local Salvation Army. If you look on the Salvation Army's website, you'll see that their mission clearly notes that it adheres to 11 principles which involve dedication to God and His good works. So if a local Salvation Army receives federal funds, an organization cannot force them to change their mission. And again, if you'd like me to send you a copy of this article at the end of the webinar, please send an email to drjanellharvey@gmail.com. So what happens if you violate federal rules concerning faith-based organizations and grant funding? If you violate the requirements, you could lose funds you receive, and you may be subject to legal action. You might be required to repay the funds you received and pay any damages that might be awarded through court action. If an organization uses its funds fraudulently, it could be subject to criminal prosecution. As you can see on this initial slide, President Bush and President Obama's priority for faith-based organizations changed tremendously, and I'm sure as the times have changed. Let's stop here briefly. I am definitely interested in learning if any of you have ever taken advantage of the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives Capital Compassion Fund, which is no longer in existence, or any of the new initiatives that exist with President Obama. Let's take about 5 minutes, and if any of you have participated in such endeavors, you can chime in concerning your participation and the outcome. So Kelly, if you don't mind,
the conference has been unmuted.
2 or 3 of our attendees, if they'd like to provide feedback.
Sure, the lines are now unmuted, so if you would like to speak, please do so.
Okay, I see that there are none. So we'll go on to the next slide. You can go ahead and mute the conversation again.
The conference has been muted.
Janelle, please dial *7 to unmute your line.
We have a poll listed here. If you could take a couple of minutes to respond, I'd like to know how many of you recently submitted a copy of an annual audit to a potential donor. We'll discuss this and the results later in the third slide. Let's take about 5 minutes and get your responses. We're going to progress to the next slide, and we'll discuss the outcomes later in our discussion. As we look at the past events that have set the stage for faith-based organizations, we would definitely be remiss if we didn't mention charitable choice, which evolved in 1996 when President William Clinton was in office. I'm sure many of you are aware of charitable choice. According to the Welfare Peer Technical Assistance Network, the charitable choice provision encouraged states to involve FBOs as providers of government-funded support services to low-income families, while protecting the religious character of the participating FBOs and the religious freedoms of their beneficiaries. States must consider religious organizations on an equal, non-discriminatory basis with other groups when deciding to contract with them and private organizations. The charitable choice law was established in 1996, and it enables faith-based organizations to apply for federal funds in order to further their mission. Now, when President Bush came into office, he actually advanced this concern that was addressed by President Clinton, and as a result, that's how the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives was established. Charitable choice was established by President Clinton as a component of the federal welfare reform so that faith-based organizations could receive funds to provide services to the poor. And the law, as I mentioned, was later extended in about 2001 by President Bush. While federal funds are not specifically for faith-based organizations, such organizations are able to compete alongside nonprofits and businesses. Charitable choice levels the playing field by allowing FBOs the opportunity to maintain their persona. Therefore, they do not have to remove their religious character when providing services. However, as I've mentioned previously, monies cannot be used to further religious activities such as Bible studies or praise and worship. Charitable choice allows faith-based organizations to participate in such programs as TANF, also known as Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. The TANF Faith-Based and Community Organizations Initiative helps to establish partnerships between TANF offices and local faith-based organizations that are interested. If you're interested in the program, you can actually contact the Administration for Children and Families. The TANF block grants are made available through the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Charitable choice, as noted on this slide, helps to pave the way for organizations like us to apply for a number of federal grant opportunities, many of which have been depleted, unfortunately, due to the downturn in the economy. But it did pave the way for us to apply for opportunities that were initially denied. Let's talk about compliance. Now that you've looked at some of the laws concerning faith-based organizations, we're going to deal specifically with 3 areas of compliance that I'm sure many of you are familiar with: Form 990, the Business Entity Report, and the Annual Audit. Once your organization is funded, it is imperative that you stay compliant. There are a number of organizations that provide free information to assist you as you work towards transparency and quality control. One such tool not listed here is called myfedtrainer.com. It's actually a website that I refer to daily. And if you register through their website, they'll send you daily newsletters and information from the field concerning compliance and grant fraud, and a list of tools that you can use during your day-to-day work. Through the organization, as I mentioned, you can sign up to receive daily updates by logging on to myfedtrainer.com. So what does it mean to stay compliant? There are clearly rules that the members of faith-based organizations must abide by. Faith-based organizations must make available for public inspection and copying their annual return, Form 990. All documents must be included and made available to the general public for at least 3 years. Now, in my working with local organizations and nonprofits, a lot of the executive directors are unaware that this is a critical requirement. If you're new to development, you can learn more about Form 990 by logging on to GuideStar.org. GuideStar is a nonprofit organization that allows nonprofit organizations to post information about their organization for free. Any nonprofit in their database can update its report with information about the mission, programs, leaders, goals, accomplishments, and your needs, all for free. And this is an excellent source for organizations seeking to garner new funds. For example, a potential donor could log on to the site and learn the strength of your organization's finances as well as its ability to manage those finances just by reviewing your Form 990. And it was very interesting to look at the results of the survey, which noted that 5 of you have submitted an annual audit to a donor, while 4 of you have not. Well, as for the 4 who haven't, it's just a matter of days before that information is going to be required because of the downturn in the economy, grant funding is becoming very, very strategic. So organizations are very particular concerning who they're willing to give money to. So it is very important to hire an external auditor to provide that information to your organization and make sure that the results are modified in the event that there are some issues identified that could raise awareness to potential donors. There are certain organizations that are not required to file annual information returns. And such organizations are churches, interchurch organizations of local churches, conventions and associations of churches, integrated auxiliaries of churches, which could be a nurse's field, church-affiliated organization that is engaged in managing funds, a school below college level that is affiliated with a church, or a church-affiliated mission society if more than half of their activities are conducted in or directed by persons in foreign countries. Also, individuals exclusively religious activities of any religious order. If you log on to the IRS website, which is irs.gov, you can determine your organization's filing status. Organizations should make sure that they check the IRS website regularly to determine any changes in filing requirements or contact the IRS directly. Faith-based organizations that receive funds from donors must remain transparent by making their books available to the general public. I know I've said that several times, but it's actually a critical area as you continue to seek larger grants for your organization. Now, transparency involves how much you tell the public about your agency and how honestly and quickly you reveal this information to the public. Another document that is necessary for compliance is known as the Business Entity Report. If your organization is established as a 501c3 or another derivative of that status, you must file the Business Entity Report annually with your state Secretary of State. I file Form 1023 for a number of individuals throughout the state of Indiana, and some of them that have had their status for years forget that this information is required. And it's imperative that you submit the information to your Secretary of State because it could result in your status being revoked. In Indiana, where I live, the filings are due during the anniversary month of the organization's formation or the anniversary month when granted authority to do business in the state of Indiana. The Secretary of State typically sends a reminder notice of the filing obligation to the web address or the email address that you have on file. Organizations can file on their Secretary of State's website. I've read several documentations that state there is an exception to this rule in the state of Ohio. Instead of a business entity report, it's actually called a certificate of continued existence. And to my understanding, the time frame for submission is a little bit different. One last compliant document is known as the annual audit. I recently read an article by a woman named Christy Forehand, and she stated that a yearly audit is a key safeguard for your money and a planning tool for the year ahead. So you can think of it as a year in review for your finances. And this is such a clear way to describe the audit. In essence, it's one of the most critical components of our fundraising efforts. Organizations should hire certified public accountants to review their organization's finances. A good audit proves to donors that your organization's treasurer and board of directors took good care when overseeing your organization's finances. That means that your line items noted in your grant proposals were spent exactly on what you requested those monies for. It proves that your organization can be trusted and that the donor shouldn't think twice about investing in your mission. But then there are audits that cause eyebrows to raise and questions to arise, and unfortunately too often this happens frequently. The external auditor should therefore have a non-biased approach and be able to identify inaccuracies quickly and address them to your senior administrators. Hard efforts should be made to ensure that inaccuracies are avoided in the future. Failure to do so can jeopardize funding and meaningful relationships with potential and current donors. Just a simple review on Google.com, type in fraud and grants and organizations and United States. That's a Boolean search. And you'll come up with all sorts of articles and news stories on how individuals in high-ranking positions have mismanaged grant funds. And we don't want any of our organizations to be among those news stories. At the beginning of the presentation, we spoke briefly about laws that impact faith-based organizations and their services. Let's go back to that discussion for a minute and define what is known as the Religious Restoration Freedom Act. The Religious Restoration Freedom Act is federal law that was introduced in 1993, and it prevents laws that burdens a person's ability to exercise his or her religion. Amendments were later made in about 1994 due to the number of discriminatory cases against Native Americans. In 1996, Jewish, Muslim, and Native American religions accounted for 18% of cases involving the free exercise of religion. Discrimination against faith-based organizations is clearly an issue, and laws like this help to prevent and avoid such matters. This is a good document to have maintained in your files at work in the event that your organization is scrutinized because of your religious activity. And again, I can send further information to you at the end of the presentation. Now, let's delve into the part of the presentation that you've all been waiting for, fund development planning. I hope thus far that you've all added to your already existing body of knowledge concerning faith-based do's and don'ts. But now let's look at what you need to do as you plan for those multi-million-dollar grants. If you are a grant writer or a director of development, begin by seeking funds from organizations whose mission and vision align with that of your organization. Too often, many of the organizations that I work with are willing to shift their mission in order to qualify for a grant. But we know that we need to stay true to our organization's purpose. FoundationCenter.org, I'm sure that many of you use the website, is an online organization that provides all sorts of information to organizations like us, including information concerning potential grant funds. Now, there's a new publication that they recently developed. It's called Grants for Religion, Religious Welfare, and Religious Education. It mentions about 1,000 foundations that provide funds specifically for religious-based initiatives. Now, you're probably sitting wondering, what organizations provide funding to organizations that have a mission specifically for faith-based initiatives? Well, let me name just a couple. One is the Menard Family Foundation. If any of my attendees on today are located in California, their office is housed in San Diego. And they provide financial assistance to Roman Catholic and other faith-based organizations, including social service organizations, parishes, schools, and even retreat centers. The Department of the Army Corporation of Engineers is another funder. The organization funds faith-based organizations with ecosystem benefits and scientific merit. Their grant awards range anywhere from $200,000 to $1 million, and the organization provides engineering services throughout the world. That organization and more information about it can actually be found on grants.gov. The CDC, or Center for Disease Control and Prevention, also provides faith-based organizations with grant dollars. Your organization can easily determine which funds it is eligible for by logging on to foundationcenter.org or grants.gov and typing faith-based in the keyword search. So you're probably wondering what it takes to receive money from such entities. To answer that question, I think it's best to look at what we as proposal developers shouldn't do. And here are the top 10 reasons proposals fail from faith-based organizations. This information I gathered by experience and research. First, our failure to submit a letter of intent initially. A lot of foundations and corporations, and even a lot of the grant opportunities listed on grants.gov, prefer that organizations send a letter of intent first. The goal of the letter is for members of the foundation or corporation to determine if our organization and our mission align with theirs. Second, our page limitations. In grade school, our infamous English teacher taught us all about MLA and APA and research writing, and as professionals, now it's our time to use that. If a funder requests that a proposal be written in 10-point font and Times New Roman and not exceed 20 pages, then we must abide by those rules. Another reason that proposals fail is because the mission of the organization doesn't align with the funder. As I mentioned, a lot of organizations don't care about mission shift, so they're willing to shift their mission just to apply for a grant. Projects are often poorly planned. For example, organizations often list a milestone chart or a timeline that doesn't seem reasonable. The budget request is often irrelevant to the grant. So there are often times when organizations have grant proposals that list all these wonderful things, but then the budget request doesn't match the programmatic components of that grant. Often the applicant misses the deadline. Sometimes the cover sheet is incomplete. There are often times when supporting documents are out of date. For example, the grant may require letters of support, and if your grant is submitted in 2012, then we can't attach letters of support that were written in 1990. And too often, grants are poorly written. Proofreading is key to grant submission. Many of you might be interested in serving on grant review committees just to learn more about a grant opportunity and to determine how a certain grant is critiqued. Finally, the grant may not include local data. Good places to find local data are public databases, the Census Bureau, local departments of education, surveys that you submit amongst your staff, and even studies by local professors. A recent article that I read articulates how organizations can use data to support grant proposals. And it was written by the Community Research Institute at Grand Valley State University. The title of the article is Using Data to Support Grant Applications and Other Funding Opportunities. Now this, of course, is just one of many articles available online that can assist you as you lead your faith-based organization that you currently work for. Google.com is a great resource that you can use to identify best practices and other information pertinent to your line of work. One of my favorite quotes is found in the book of Luke 14 and 28, and it reads, "For which of you intending to build a tower did not sit down first and count up the cost, whether have sufficient to finish it?" Clearly, proposal development takes planning, and programs for faith-based initiatives require money. Once we identify costs associated with our efforts, we must then carefully identify donors whose mission aligns with ours. Can you believe the first fundraising effort was established in 1643 at Harvard University, and then it was called begging. But don't worry, we no longer have to beg. We have to instead stay true to our organization's mission and find funding opportunities that align with our vision. As we come to a close, I want you to consider these 4 rules as you move forward into the new year in an effort to sustain your cause. First, fill out a needs assessment. There are plenty of samples available online, or you can use websites like SurveyMonkey to survey your staff and clients and to determine your organization's needs. You can then use the results from the survey to pinpoint ideas for proposal development. Secondly, complete a constituency model. This is a model that was developed by the great Hank Rosso. The constituency model is a worksheet that helps you to identify which businesses, organizations, and other entities have similar interests. Those individuals may provide opportunities for meaningful partnerships. Donors often look first to see if organizations within the same areas are working together in lieu of duplicating services. Third, brainstorm ideas. Work with your organization's board of directors, host a retreat, or review the year's positive outcomes, and make suggestions for future success. And finally, develop a case statement. The case explains to your potential donors what you need money for and what the benefits will be if the donor gives to your cause. Your local library should have a number of resources with samples, and you can also find samples online. I wish kind regards to all of you as you move into 2013, which is just a couple of weeks away. And if you'd like a copy of the articles noted in this webinar or a copy of the websites that I've mentioned, again, please send an email to me at drjanellharvey@gmail.com. Kelly, at this time, could you please open the line for questions?
I will be happy to.
The conference has been unmuted.
Okay, the lines are all unmuted. If you have any questions, please feel free to do so.
I work with a lot of very small faith-based organizations. I'm a grant developer. And one of the big questions is the external audit. Do you have suggestions for, many of them have budgets under $100,000. Do you have any suggestions for external financial reviews that are not audits?
Normally, a donor is going to require that it is a financial audit, but there are local universities where students may be working on their MBA, and they could be licensed CPA who may actually do the annual audit for your organization as a capstone project. So it would be maybe a good idea for those organizations to seek support from local universities in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question with regards to starting up the grant process with a new project. We have an existing church. We have a project that we're 1 year into, but really don't have a lot of background with regards to grants and moving forward with getting the funding necessary for a garden. We actually are a garden that funds and helps needy families in our community.
Okay, if you don't mind, maybe do you have a case statement developed for the organization or the initiative? Or maybe just a summary of what your intentions are?
We do.
Okay, if you could email that to me later today, I will look in my database and see what organizations might align with what you're anticipating doing. Also include in that email where you're located, because a lot of donors only give to certain geographic areas.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And how about the website that you said listed the 1,000 potential foundations? Would you repeat that?
I'm sorry. It's foundationcenter.org, and they have a lot of information that is free. But if you really want to get into the meat and potatoes, so to say, you're going to have to spend a couple dollars. But a lot of that information is free.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Also note that if you do decide to use the Foundation Directory online, that you can, all GPA members receive 10% off of the professional subscription.
You can also go to your local libraries. Most of them have it if you live in a big enough city.
Exactly.
Oh, can I ask if we can ask myself, my name is Terry, I would like to have the doctor send links to the different articles and the websites. I'm interested in all of it. Is there any way just to send all of it?
Yes, Go ahead and send me an email when we're done, and I'll send it right over to you.
Okay, I appreciate that. It was very, very interesting and helpful. It's just, yes, those are the details I would like to get more into, and you know, that's the meat of the survey, I guess you'd say, of the meeting.
Okay.
Dr. Harvey, I have a question about a mission on an international basis. Do you have a particular website or an area that we can go to get funding for? Okay.
As well, if you could send me an email, I will send you information back by email.
All right. Thank you.
Just to interject before the next question, I don't know if any of you are into major gifts or donations from individuals, but that's another area that your organization could use to seek additional funds for your initiative, especially the individual who just requested information about international and foreign missions. I don't know if you're familiar with Gospel for Asia.
Repeat that, please.
There's an organization called Gospel for Asia. It's been in existence for a number of years now. My husband is actually a assistant pastor, and we receive the mailing. They have like a newsletter they send out about monthly. And they have an envelope in there where individuals can submit money to help men and women go to Asia and spread information concerning Christianity. So I was just saying that a lot of foreign missions use direct giving in lieu of grants in order to sustain their initiative.
Right. I understand. Okay, thank you. I will send an email, though, because I need some more information.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Harvey, is there anything that you would like to add, or?
Just thank you all for sitting in. This is an area that is really, really near and dear to my heart. And as I continue to do additional research and find additional information, I will keep those of you who send me an email in my database, and on occasion send information that I think might be pertinent to you in your endeavors.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, that concludes our webinar. We'd like to ask each of you to remain with us a few moments longer and complete the webinar survey.
Okay.
Okay, and thank you to our presenter, Janell, for her time and willingness to share her information and expertise. Also, thank you to all of you who have attended. We're glad that you can join us and hope that the session was helpful for you. Later today, you will receive a recorded version of the webinar along with the slides again. Please take the time to visit our GPA calendar and view all of our webinars that we have scheduled up until April 2013. Those will all be open for registration starting in January. Happy holidays and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please stand by.